Hi, are you thinking of starting your own business? Well, I'm going to try and make it very simple for you. I'm going to suggest that you get 7 answers to 7 questions that I'm going to give you right now. Now, I'm going to give you the 7 answers in some detail, but I'm going to also ask at the end that you go and dig much deeper and research into the answers that I'm about to give you. So if you're thinking of starting a business and you're a little anxious or unsure of what to address before you begin starting that business, pay attention for the next couple minutes. I think you're going to find this very useful. Okay? Now, I've built and sold 2 companies successfully, and I've spent quite a bit of time mentoring other people that are contemplating starting their own businesses. And what I found is most people don't think of these questions. Most people that do don't understand the answers. And quite frankly, most of the people that I talk to are ill-prepared to even consider starting a business. Now, having said that, starting a business is not complex. It's difficult, it requires a lot of hard work, but it's not complicated. I'm going to give you a very fundamental framework to follow in the form of these 7 answers. So pay attention, and let me jump into 7 answers I think you need to know before you consider starting a business. Number 1, are you an expert in your field? Now, you might think, well, do I have to be an expert in my field to start my own business? And I would tell you, no, you don't. But if you're not an expert, someone in the decision-making process, someone in the funding process, someone in the oversight or management process, one of your partners has to be. And maybe you can cobble the expertise together from a couple of partners, but as a collective whole, the ownership needs to be a collective expert in the business. So I wouldn't suggest that you need to be an expert as an individual. I would suggest that it's something that you care about and quite likely are passionate about, but you don't specifically have to be the expert as long as you collectively have people in the ownership circle that all together compromise expertise. So that's number 1. Number 2, what is your unique selling proposition? That's referred to as a USP in business acumen. Essentially what a unique selling proposition is what is it about your product or service that is unique to you? Now, is it the functionality of your product? Is it the speed with which your product brings someone to a particular result? Is it the ease with which your product can be used? If it's a service, is it unique in the way that you deliver that service? Do you have unique customer service? The only thing I would shy away from a unique selling proposition would be price. I would never recommend that you try and compete by price because it's kind of a bottom feeder play. I'd much prefer that you charge more than anyone else, but you also deliver more value than anyone else. If you create a unique selling proposition in such a capacity that the only place someone can go to get your experience, your product or your service is to you, there is no competition. So this is a really important point in terms of starting a business. If you develop a phenomenal and unique selling proposition, everything else that you're going to do in your business is going to be much easier to do. So this might be the most important one of all 7, but I'll leave that up to you. So that's number 2. What is your unique selling proposition? Number 3, who's your customer? Now that might sound like a very general statement, but the extent to which you can drill down into this question or into this answer, as it were, the better off you're going to be. And so what do I mean by who is your customer? Well, I would suggest to you that I recommend that you understand the age of your customer, the interests of your customer. Maybe there's a geographic location distinction. Maybe there's a gender distinction. These are all very, very important things to understand about your customer because the extent to which you can focus your branding and your messaging, your logo, all your marketing material, your mission statement, your vision statement, the messaging that comes out of every one of the mouths of any of your employees. In other words, if someone were to approach anyone in your organization, partners, suppliers, employees, clients, customers, and they were to be asked to describe their experience with you, that they would all say similar, if not the same thing. So spend a good bit of time really trying to research and understand who exactly are you selling to. If you can get this definition down of exactly who your customer is, everything else gets easier. So that's number 3. Who's your customer? Number 4, are you solving an existing problem or are you solving a new problem? And these are just essentially 2 different approaches, and they bring 2 different mindsets. Just very simply, if you are solving an existing problem, then chances are this is a problem that's been around forever and will be around forever. And I think the perfect example is weight loss. A lot of things that have to do with health, with the exception of new treatments and so on. But if you take weight loss, it's always been a challenge and it always will be. And what that's referred to as an evergreen problem. It will always be. And when you're solving an existing problem, you really have to go back to that unique selling proposition. So really, your biggest task with an existing problem is how unique is your solution? And again, unique could come in different forms: customer service, delivery, speed, and maybe it's just the way that your messaging is set up. You might just be the cutest one in the world, or the most humorous one in the world, or maybe you just resonate with your customer in a much more unique way than anyone else. It could be very simple or it could be a little bit more complex. But if you're trying to solve an existing problem, you really want to focus on being unique in some capacity. If you are trying to solve a brand new problem, and we could toss out things like anything to do with artificial intelligence or robotics or virtual reality, a lot of the newer problems are thrust upon us as consumers with advances in technology. The most important thing, probably if you're solving a new problem, is speed to market. So whatever your problem, the problem is that you're trying to address, you need to package it up properly. It needs to be unique, and you need to understand who your customer is, but you really have to get it to market quickly. And if you get it there first, you don't have any competition until the copycats come in. So that's number 4. Recognize that you're either addressing an existing problem or you're addressing a new problem, and adjust your approach accordingly. So that's number 4, existing or new. Number 5, what is it going to cost you to get going? What are your startup costs going to be? And a bit of a story I have here. The first company that I started as a primary owner, one of the first things we had to do is get office space and furniture. And we didn't want to spend the money because those are high ticket items, but we had to. So we sought out some kind of B space and prettied it up a bit with some new paint and things like that, and tried to get signed into a lease that was not as long as we might have done otherwise, if we were making a lot of money. But we were a startup. The second thing we did was look for furniture, and I remember vividly going to this furniture warehouse that somebody recommended. And this was thousands of square feet full of really nice furniture that was being sold for 10, 20, 30, 40 cents on the dollar. Well, where does furniture come from? It came from other startup businesses that had failed because they spent so much money before they even started to look into the answers to these 7 questions. So you really have to understand what your startup costs are going to be. If you're bringing money in from the outside, investors, you're going to give up some control. If you're bootstrapping things, at what point through financial projections are you going to be able to break even and start bringing some money in? And then at what point are you going to be able to pay your bills and have a sustainable business? But a lot of people don't pay any attention to researching what their startup costs might be. And those that guess always guess low. So could be furniture, could be an office building, could be an online business where it's just a domain name and some hosting. But get out a piece of paper and a pencil, old school again, and just do a brain dump in terms of what you know about your business, and line item by line item, categorize the categories of what your costs might be, and then put a value to them that's reasonable, and then mark it up. Because if you guess and your startup costs come out to be less than you thought they were, you're golden. But if you guess and they're much higher, that could literally put you out of business. So again, understand what your startup costs are going to be. Number 6 is, do you really understand how you're going to generate revenue? And I know that sounds very obvious, and I'm a salesman, so it's probably more intuitive for me to understand that without a whole lot of thought. I've also got some experience generating sales and revenue. But think about it like this. Another thing that when I mentor young people, or anyone that's not had the experience of starting and building a business, they think that having a great product or a great service or a unique product or a unique service, it'll just sell itself. I've never seen that happen, and I don't expect that it ever will. Now, I'm sure there are people that have invented things, fad-like things, or very unique technological advancements, and through happenstance or circumstance or sheer luck, somebody with a large audience grabbed it, loved it, and told the world about it, and the marketing was by advocate, by word of mouth, by referral. I wouldn't depend on that. So I think in order to understand how you're going to generate revenue, you have to think through the selling process, the sales partners you might have, the advocates you might have, a referral network, branding, messaging, social media, any kinds of details involved in how are we going to get our product or service into the hands of our first customer, and then how are we going to expand from our first to second, and so on and so on. It's a big topic that requires a separate video to give you the complete solution. And frankly, if I didn't understand your specific business or the circumstances around it, I'd be shooting blanks at a wall. But think about the process specifically. How are we going to generate that first dollar of revenue? And how are we going to build on that to generate increasing amounts of revenue over time? Things don't sell themselves. That's number 6. How are you going to generate revenue? Make sales. The last one, number 7, is how are you going to generate profits? And you may think to yourself, well, we just talked about selling and generating sales. That's great. That's not profits. Okay? This is a combination of all the other things we've talked about. But profits are what you take in after you generate revenue and you flush all the necessary and reasonable and related expenses through the process of paying for the ability to generate that revenue. So you could be generating $10 million in revenue and go out of business tomorrow because you're incurring $11 million in expenses. So this is why cash flow projections, financial projections, business plans, profit and loss statements, there's a thing called a SWOT analysis, which I would highly recommend you do. And that stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And it's essentially an exercise that makes you go through the diligence of understanding where are the opportunities, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and what threats might be ahead of you in the marketplace that you've chosen to do business. So how you're going to generate profits doesn't just fall out of the sky when you determine your unique selling proposition, how you're going to sell this thing, who your customer is, and so on. There's a whole additional exercise to determine how you get from revenue to profits. So everything I just mentioned, the business plan process, the SWOT analysis, some cash flow projections, and just the rigor that goes into thinking through all of these things. You don't necessarily have to be a genius to do this stuff. Really, the best thing about what I've just shared with you is think about this stuff and then go out and learn how to address these issues. And then as you build your business, you'll refine those skills and you'll continuously learn more and more. But if you take these 7 questions and ask yourself these 7 questions and then take the answers I've just given you and the recommendations I've just given you and go real deep into all 7, you're going to be far more prepared than 95% of the other people that I've come in contact with that have tried to start their own businesses and failed. And frankly, this is why 80+% of new businesses fail. It's not because of money, it's not because of bad ideas. It's because people don't take the necessary rigor and get into the necessary detail that they should before they make any effort or spend any money on a new business. So hopefully you found that helpful. Hopefully you've got some homework if you are considering doing anything about a new business, starting up a new business. And we do talk a lot about this at 7pillarsglobal.com. So I'd be very interested in your comments below, and I would also be happy to answer whatever questions you might have if you put them in the comments. And I'll also drop some related links, if you will, some other resources that might be helpful if you really want to speed up the process of getting that door open on your new business. So thanks for your time, and we'll see you in the next video.